system. It's almost like a mind technology in a way.
And where does the self come in here? So we have doctrines and views and the way we talk about things and the stories we tell, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there's also, at least according to Buddhism, the central principle of anatta, that we also have to break through the concept that there is a self. Is that like the final frontier? Is that the final breakthrough after all the other levels, or especially for Western people who are raised on the idea that not only is there a self, but that's the most important thing that there is. And there's a whole, academic and industry of psychology and psychotherapy geared toward, exploring the self.
I don't think it's necessarily the final frontier. I think it often is the final frontier, because it probably doesn't mean what we assume it to mean. A lot of times in the West, people will hear this concept of anatta or selflessness, and it becomes a kind of exercise in nihilism, of annihilating something, and one either dreads that or looks forward to it, but it's not the point anyway. I think the Buddha was saying the self, as we normally construe it to be, that construction is incorrect. We assume something solid, permanent, unyielding, unchanging, and independent of causes and conditions. So in Tibetan Buddhism, they have this phrase that I like, which is something like, there's no self, there's no thing, including the self, that exists from its own side. Nothing is independent of causes and conditions, and the confluence of relationships, which is really, what we are, what the world is. And so it takes a very deep exploration on all levels, experiential as well as analytic, to understand what is meant by anatta, because it's not really what we tend to think it is. But the reason I don't think it's the final frontier is because really, in the Buddhist teaching, that's one of three characteristics of impermanence or unsatisfactoriness or essencelessness. Some people these days translate it as transparency, to get rid of that idea of that, blankness. And so it's also taught that any one of those three a very deep insight into any one of those three can be a doorway to liberation. And that we also probably have almost like personality tendencies toward one or the other. Some people just tune into the truth of impermanence, and other people into unsatisfactoriness, and yet other people anatta. And it's like when I first heard the teachings of anatta, when I was in India, I thought, what are they talking about? I don't have a clue what this is about. And our friend Fred von Allman, who's a Swiss meditation teacher, he told me that the first time he heard that word, anatta, and the description, he said it was like the hairs on his body stood up. He knew so deeply what it was about. And I said, really? Like, not me, That wasn't my thing at all. So whatever really is kind of almost like provoking our deepest sense of, yes, that's how I see things, that's true, I think will take us as far as we need to go.
Well, one final question, and it takes a slightly different turn. So at Garrison Institute, we have made our mission exploring the intersection and the interplay between personal and social transformation, and how contemplation and contemplative practice both creates and contributes to both. Can there be what is the relationship between social transformation and these teachings and practices of compassion and benevolent connection and wisdom? Can you have social transformation without contemplation? It seems like a lot of people work at that. We do have hundreds of advocacy groups and millions of people, it seems, who do public policy and scientific analysis and social analysis and community organizing and electioneering and campaigning, all to create social transformation. How deeply connected and intertwined are these two, in fact? What we at Garrison have said are intertwined. Maybe that's sort of an assumption that's not very self-evident. Personal transformation and social transformation, and how contemplation plays in there.
I don't think they're inevitably intertwined. Just as you say, in all those examples, there are, countless stories of people with tremendous altruism and dedication to the welfare of others, and good sense of strategy, who work for the benefit of society, for social transformation. But I think they're a potentially extraordinary and unique combination. Because it's not just that with contemplative practice one can sustain an effort longer, although that's true. And it's not just that one is more patient and more balanced, although that's also true. I think it actually gives, the contemplative practice gives one the tools to really look deeply into causes and conditions, so that one's efforts are not just staying on the surface, of a particular problem, but really looking at a change in consciousness. So many people I know, clearly, in these financial difficulties, are relooking at their patterns of consumption. Now, isn't that interesting? It's absolutely terrible if it means you're losing your home or your job, or you're in a state of extreme difficulty. But if it's actually a mirror that's saying, wait a minute, do I really need, 15 more books I'm not going to read? Or, another one of these. I already have 3. That's a kind of good thing. And so I think we have an opportunity to use the tools of contemplation to understand the roots of suffering for ourselves and for society, and as well as having the strength and the sustainability and the kindness and the good humor, to do something about seemingly intractable problems.
Did you want to add anything to
that? No, I think so. I think that they're not necessarily, as you said, there are people doing extremely good works, motivated by a tremendous good heart, not apparently out of a contemplative practice. But and everything else that you said, I think that it's sustained by, and that I think it's hopeful that to promote, as Garrison is, contemplative practices, even the idea of them. One of the things that touches me a lot is that the image of the Dalai Lama has become universally, but very widely recognized, so that I see it up on billboards advertising who knows what, because you can just take anybody's image, I suppose, and put it up. And I think that on some level, even people with no experience at all of meditation, don't know a lot about Buddhism, somehow have gotten the sense from their limited media contact with His Holiness, for instance, that there's something special about this person, and what the special is something about an engaged but easeful heart. And that if the idea alone was out in the society, that you could be an engaged person working for world peace, and at the same time still have a peace-filled heart, that would be a wonderful idea to have in the community, even if people did not pursue that end through particular meditative techniques. It's like discovering and really believing that peace is possible. So both and, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.